Welcome to Phase 5 of our ZR2 diesel buildup. This phase, AEV skid plates. Come check them out.
All right, we're back in the shop with our 2019 ZR2 diesel project, and this edition we're going to add the skid plate system from AEV conversions. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a skid plate for the gas tank. That is this component right here. The skid plate system that covers up this right here, that is this component. And then we have your transmission tubular skid plate, and then the front differential skid plate. Those runners will be going parallel with the wheelbase of the truck, running down through here. What that does, that keeps debris from trapping in here and creating heat. It allows a skid system, but also allows debris to come out between those tubes right here. And then the front skid plate will replace the factory aluminum piece. So this will come off and that will go in its place. All right, the first thing we're going to do is remove the factory skid plate for the differential and also for the transfer case. Okay, now that we have the front differential skid plate off, the next piece of the puzzle is going to be putting the new skid here, but then there's also a front support plate for skid number 2 or 3 that goes here with the tubes for the transmission. So there's a bolt attachment point we're going to add. You're going to have one right here, one here, and then a third one over here, which is going to be this little nut plate that slides in, and this bolt will go up through the bottom. So here we have the support plate for the cross member tubes, and that bolt's going to go in here, and it's going to start right there. Next we'll have our differential skid plate. It's going to go back in place here. We're going to put that on the bottom side, that way it can be serviced separately. Now we're ready to tighten those 6 bolts. Next, we're going to prepare for the transmission skid. That has a long nut plate which will slide through the frame right here, and that will feed down through there. But to prepare for that installation, we need to put a hole in the cross member tube. So see, that one already has an existing hole and this one does not. So we're going to drill a hole there so that we can get that in there and those holes lined up. All right, now that we've got this hole drilled and some paint applied, we're going to slide our nut plate in from the side of the truck, and you will see right here the hole lining up on that end as well as this end. And you can see how the tab of the nut plate sticks out of the tube just slightly. Now on this transfer case skid plate, there's going to be some triangle shaped holes here. What we need to do is slide these tab nuts into the side of the skid. This is the rear section of the skid. And those snap in just like that. And what that's going to do is link the gas tank skid plate to this skid plate. The gas tank skid plate also ties in not only on the back, but the side of this transfer case skid. And we've got 2 more tab nuts that will snap in like so. Alright, on the side of the frame, there's going to be holes that run up the side of the frame that are already in the truck, and this tab nut will fit behind there, and you'll have this bolt with thread locker that runs through there into this tab nut that locks it into the frame. Here's the frame side of that. So one tab nut will drop down from the top, and that hole lines up there, and the other one is going to go in from the side here and line up there. The front attachment point will consist of this J-bolt that drops down through the factory cross member, runs through the skid, and there will be a nut on the bottom side. Alright, here's the top side of that. The J-bolt runs down through the top of the cross member, and then that bolt hangs down there, and then your skid will come up here and you'll fasten the nut. All right, now that we have those in place, we can move over here to the side.
Moving on to the transmission skid plate, we've got a series of tubes that will mount from the front to the rear. There's going to be a square notch in each end of this tube, and there's going to be a carriage bolt, but we've got 3 front attachment bolts we need to loosen up just a little bit to give us a little wiggle room to get all these holes lined up front to back, left to right. We'll loosen those up, and then we start attaching these tubes. This is probably the most time-consuming portion of this install. There's a 15mm nut on the side of each end of this tube, and a few of them are going to be pretty hard to get to, but we had a couple of guys working on it, and it took a little time, but it turned out really nice. We pre-assembled the gas tank skid plate. There's 3 legs that will attach with a 15mm nut and a stud. The one on the driver's side has a smashed part bent in the middle, and then on the opposing side we've got 2 straight legs. The longer leg goes to the rear and the shorter leg goes to the front. On the driver's side there will be a tab that comes up. There's another one of those thread locked 15mm bolts. It'll have a tab nut in the frame. And then over on the front, where those nut clips were installed in the transfer case skid plate, those bolts will come up through there. There's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. On the rear of the gas tank skid, there's a plastic like isolator that goes in between, and there's 3 push clips that snap in from the inside, and they'll protrude out the back side just slightly. Moving up to where we mount the skid plate to the truck for the gas tank, will have a front point and a rear point on the passenger side. The front point has a hole that's already in the frame cross-member tube, and we'll use one of those flag nuts on the front, and the rear leg, the long leg, will mount and we'll have to drill a hole for a self-tapping bolt. On the other side, the driver's side rear, where that bent tube was, we'll also get a drilled hole. It's going to take a few guys maybe to lift this up and get it in place, get those front 4 15mm bolts started, and then you'll have that flag nut and bolt that goes through the side on the driver's side rear, and then we have those 3 tubes that have to go in. The front one, of course, threads into that flag nut. The rear one's going to get marked and drilled. So right here we'll get those snugged up, and then we'll drill that cross-member tube and the frame, and then they'll get the 2 self-threading bolts. They have kind of a tapered tip, so it cuts the threads as it goes in there with a nice little impact driver. It doesn't take too much force, but once you get those in, you can go back and tighten all the 15mm nuts that are on those studs on each side of the tank.